Okay. And then I'll just start, I'll introduce you and we'll start from there. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining me for another episode of That's Where I'm At. Today, I have a friend who's a single white female. This is her description with a sense of humor. Yes, we do laugh a lot when we're together. She's a former wife. She's a former stay-at-home mom and homeschooler. She's presently single, empty nester. She's a grandmother and a wannabe homesteader. So I want to hear more about that. And her life and goals have done a complete 180 in the last decade. And that's what we're going to talk about today. She is in a place that she never thought she would be when she thought about her future. And I think she's doing pretty darn well. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, use your voice because we're on podcast and video.
Okay.
Yes.
No one's ever accused me of being quiet or having an inside voice.
That's right. You don't have to use your inside voice here. You are accepted just the way you are. Hi, welcome. You know, when we were talking, we had a lot to talk about, but I think what we want to talk about today is some of the things you said in your bio is that your life looks different today than it did, than you thought it would. And so let's kind of start from there. What are we going to talk about today? What are we talking about today? So, I mean, how did you get? So just let's start at the beginning of, we got to work our way backwards from where you are now and to where it started. So let's start with your relationship before the dissolution of your marriage.
Okay.
Is that a good place to start? Where would you like to start?
From the beginning.
Okay, let's do it.
So I had an unexpected pregnancy in college, and that was a curveball. Before that, I was wild and whatever. And then for a few years, I was just raising my daughter, and I had no idea, like, am I going to get married? And am I going to have kids? Am I going to just be a single mom? Is it just going to be me and her for the rest of my life? Right. I had no idea what my life looked like. But I knew what I wanted. I wanted the picket fence. I wanted the perfect home, the perfect husband, the perfect family, what everybody wants.
So let me ask you, so why did you dream of that? Is that something that you didn't have in your childhood, or you did have it in your childhood and that's what you wanted, or you thought that was the dream?
That's funny because yes and no. So my parents got divorced when I was young. I was in second grade. And that, the early part of my life was, I wouldn't say traumatic, but those years a lot, there were, my parents, it wasn't good. Anyway, they got divorced. Yeah. And then my mom remarried a man that she was married to for 43 years until she passed. He adopted all of us as his children. Okay. So in that respect, so once that happened, then I did have a very normal, cookie cutter life, kids, vacations, long marriage, it wasn't a broken home. That wasn't a broken home. I came from a broken home, but then once I was married, so exactly the same thing with me. So when I met my husband, well, to be honest with you, because I was a bit of a wild child and I was actually afraid to get married. I always thought that, because I always thought I would be the one to ruin it. Oh. I thought that I would be the one that would do something dumb and mess it all up. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of fearful actually to commit to get married. And in fact, with my oldest daughter's father, when we found out I was pregnant, right away he wanted to get married, and I was like, oh no. Like, I don't want to marry you.
I don't want to.
And
no, thank you.
And good, and rightfully so, like, because it didn't work out. Okay. But I just kind of thought that. So then I met my husband, and I met him very organically. He was a coworker of mine's brother, mm-hmm. and we played on a softball team together. and he would just come out to the games to watch his sister play. And he was like, hey, who's your friend? Can you, and it was funny because when she first, I never even noticed him or whatever. And she said, would you go out with my brother? And I said, well, who wants to know? You or your brother? And she said, well, my brother. And I'm like, then why are you asking me?
Right.
And it was funny because if you know him, and people that know him, he's not the least bit shy, but he was just so standoffish. Like I would always catch him staring at me, and he was just kind of weird, quite frankly.
Tall, dark, and mysterious.
But anyways, we started talking and we went on a date. And the other thing too is he was 5 years younger than me.
Okay.
And so for a hot minute, that kind of, I was like, oh, this guy's too young, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we just honestly, the main attraction, and physically he wasn't my type either.
Okay.
But I didn't want to hurt my friend's feelings and tell her that about her brother, so I agreed to go out with him.
So then, there's a lesson in there, Chris.
Well, the thing is, we laughed all the time. Like, I am corny, I am goofy, and I love to laugh. And this guy had me in stitches constantly. And it was, so I wasn't even really paying attention to the age difference or whatever. Right. Like we just really had a good time all the time, Right. And then I really saw, there was a couple things. One, I saw how family oriented he was. He was really close with his brothers and sisters, with his grandparents, with his, just really, really close with his family. And so I was really attracted to that. And then the other thing was, this guy went to church every Sunday, and I was not going to church at that time. Okay. Now, mind you, I was raised in the church, and that was, what do you call it? I had that background, but I was in a point in my life, I call it my prodigal decade. It was, I was in my prodigal decade. Okay. And he was going to church every Sunday and without fail. And he would just go. And then he started taking my daughter to church. And I remember he came home and told me that some lady at church asked him if he was a widow because he always brought his little girl to church and he didn't have a wife. Oh my. I know. And I was like, So those were the things that I thought, okay, this is a guy, I could see myself with this guy. He had those qualities. And so that's the beginning. And then we were trying to have a baby before we were even married, even though we knew we wanted to get married, and we had talked about getting married, and we had been together, I think, about 2.5 years at that point. And he was very good to my daughter, and she was calling him daddy because her dad was absent. And then we got a house, we got a new car, I had started a business, and I was like, you know what, now is really not a good time to have a baby. And so we put the brakes on it, and a month later I was pregnant. We tried for probably almost a year and didn't get pregnant. Wow. So then when I got pregnant, it was like, okay, well, we need to get married right away. So we had our wedding within a couple months, threw something together. It was a beautiful wedding, but it was pretty informal. We got married in my uncle's backyard, and it was not a huge wedding, but we had a nice wedding. Right. But we wanted to make sure that we were married before. I mean, we had already been living together for 2 years. I already had a child out of wedlock, but we wanted to do things right. Okay. That's what you wanted. And then, and after I had my son, things just went along, and I worked a little bit out of the home for a time, but we both decided that I really wanted to be at home. And then also we decided to homeschool my daughter. And so I needed to be at home. And so we made, I would say, the sacrifice of a 2-income family to, to be able to do that. And, I know a lot of people that, we didn't have the things that other people had, or were able to do the things other people did, but we were content with our choice. Right. And then we tried to have another child, and it took quite a while, 6 years, I think, 6 or 7 years. And then we had the third child, and I just thought everything was great. We were super active in our church. We were youth leaders, and we went on mission trips a couple of times a year. We took our kids on mission trips. We were involved in a lot of different ministries, and our kids were in ministries, and we were part of a homeschool group, and we were, like, I just thought we had it all.
Well, let
And
me
then
ask you, looking back, do you think you see some signs you ignored of issues, looking back now? Or that you were, one of the questions I was thinking of, and I thought was a good question, especially for me, where did you abandon yourself? Do you feel like you did? Did you see any signs of any issues?
Well, I know the one thing I would say is, because after we got divorced and I was like, okay, how am I going to provide for myself now?
Mm-hmm.
I did give that up. But like I said, that was a conscious decision that we made
Right.
for me to be able to stay home. But then I was like, okay, now I have no skills, no career, no way to support myself. So that I lost.
Right. So,
And then when we talk about I know everybody throws this word around, but the narcissism,
right.
I can see how over the years, like, I did lose myself in that he would, things that were cute and funny before, now he would put it down and
Okay.
act like that was, and he would shut me down, I guess, in a way like I didn't feel comfortable or free to, like, I started, like, I wouldn't say censoring myself, but like you said, like, I just wasn't true to who I really was. Like, for example, here's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Karaoke.
Okay.
Like, I love karaoke. And whenever we would go out, like, we went after one of our softball games, when we were at a karaoke bar, and this is very, we were just dating, and I'm singing karaoke and, whatever. And over the years, he was like, you're not going to get up and sing. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because you embarrass me. And I'm like, how are you embarrassed? I'm the one up here singing.
Right.
I'm embarrassing myself. But things like that, to where I didn't want to get up and sing. Mm-hmm. Or dance, dance in public. He would never dance with me. I love to dance. He would never dance with me. And he made me feel like, and then anytime I did dance, he'd like laugh, like, like and everything was a joke. Like, he'd always do something, and then I'd tell him that hurt my feelings or how that made me feel. And he'd say, well, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
But you weren't, but I don't think he was kidding. I think he was trying to, what's the word?
They're kind of trying to knock you down and devalue you, is if you're using the buzzwords, which is part of the narcissism and the gaslighting and all that. Because I had the same thing. It's like stuff that used to be cute wasn't cute anymore, and now was being criticized. And it's like, I'm so confused. What? But it's all part of the mind games.
But then you rein yourself in and you don't do those things anymore.
Oh no, I was really, I was very, very small. And you and I are not small people. We are
right. So you know what I mean? Yeah.
Especially when you and I are in the room together, I'm sure our friends are like, oh yeah. We had a third friend too she would probably be in that category too, but she's since gone. But yes, I mean, it's just, I was like, how did you choose somebody so loud? And then now you're having a problem with me being loud.
Right. And that was a thing too. Like, he would, the things that I think, I wouldn't say he loved them about me, but I would say they didn't bother him. And then all of a sudden everything bothered him, and he would make me feel like an idiot, like.
Right.
And I
so
was
you had to think about, you were always thinking about, like you said, you were censoring yourself. So, so that was some ways that you were abandoning who you were. And how long do you think before you guys had some issues, your big issues and you can talk about those however you want to, but, how long did you do that, you think? I mean, for me, it's been hindsight. I didn't realize while it was happening. So I have to go back in time and think about those
and
things.
that's what I was going to say, is that I didn't, what do you call it? I don't think I mean, I did sometimes because I would get so mad.
Yeah.
And in fact, Laura, I've never even talked about this. I made a notebook. Okay, like I just had like a little those composition books.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I would be upset, rather than be vocal about it,
Uh-huh.
because whether I didn't want to confront him or whether I didn't want to start a fight, or really I didn't want to say things I would regret later. So
Mm-hmm.
I would write it in this book. I would
Okay.
just write the things that I was feeling in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it stashed like in my pantry in a stack of cookbooks, like whatever. Well, when everything happened and we were going through stuff, he said, I know how you really feel. I read your little book. I was
Oh,
shocked for several reasons because one, how in the world did you find that book? Like
right.
it just looked like a composition book in a stack of cookbooks tucked away in the pantry. Like, how in the world? But, and I tried to explain to him, like, though I put those things in a book so I wouldn't say those things,
Right.
like I wanted to get them out, but I didn't want to say them because I knew some of the things, like when I would say, God, I hate him so much,
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Right.
want to say that to you because 10 minutes from now, I won't feel that way. But right now, that's how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And he read the book. I have no idea how he found it or, I don't know. But yeah,
And then he didn't say anything, which I'm sure
no,
then he used it
no.
as fuel for the fire, and
But
blaming you. That's the thing is they blame you or us or whatever for feeling that way, even though they made us feel that way,
yeah,
even though they were being rude or whatever. So, what were your reasons that you guys decided to not be together anymore?
well, I wouldn't say, I don't want to say deteriorating, but the last couple of years, we did go through some stuff.
Uh huh.
But there was a lot of things. He was involved in a fatal accident that really traumatized him.
Yeah,
His
I remember that.
sister, who was his person in the world, died. And then his grandfather, weeks after that, who essentially raised him. Um, my mom was diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Hmm.
There were just a lot of things were happening all at
Hmm.
once. So when things started getting um, I don't know what the word is, dysfunctional between us. Um, I kind of attributed it to, we're just going through some things right now and we'll get
Right.
through this. And when we're on the other side, we're
Yeah.
gonna,
Right. When
and
you
I
have
think
that much
too,
trauma at one time, I remember those things happening and they were
yeah.
happening all at once. That was a big deal. That was
Hmm.
probably really traumatizing for him. And especially if you don't go deal with it.
Well, and that was the thing is I felt like I really tried to be there for him and be supportive in whatever way he needed, although I didn't know what he needed. But when I would ask him, I asked him, and he would just tell me, I just want to be left alone. I just
Mm.
want to, he didn't want to talk to me. He didn't want to. And then later he turned it around and said, well, you weren't there for me. Well, I
Oh,
was there for you. I didn't know how to be there for you, but I asked you. And then intimacy became an issue. And it was probably, well, to hear him tell it, there was like we lived in a desert. Okay, that's not the truth.
right.
But I will admit that things weren't as active. But I would also say that, like I said, there were a lot of things going on, and then you know. For me, when you devalue me, when you treat me a certain way, and then you want to show love to me physically, I have a hard time with that because that's not how I'm feeling you feel towards me.
I don't mean to
And
laugh, but you and I talked about this before. Let me tell you the theme of this show. Same story, different characters.
yeah,
Chris said that, and I have to agree. And that's the only reason I'm laughing because I'm like, are you telling my story?
right.
Because it's none of your business, Chris.
Well, no, and I know, and that's what I mean.
No,
Like, I
it's
don't want to delve too deeply into that,
no,
but
no,
I
you
will
don't
say
need
that,
to because what you said was exactly right because I've heard it talked about that way where it's like there's no shared responsibility. Okay? That's where it comes from. And that I'm going to devalue you all day, but then I expect this. That's not how life works. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, and in a crude way, they say, a woman is like a skillet. You got to heat it up before you can put something in it, right?
That's right.
So
I love it.
it was like, yeah, don't come around here, after I don't know. It just, if there, so there was that. And then
Yeah.
I would say, and I would honestly say, I did try to communicate with him. And, this too, whenever I would say, we need to talk, I'd get this, oh, like,
Yeah.
what? And he would just, and he would never respond to anything. And I felt like, and I would tell him, because he wouldn't say anything. And he'd say, well, what do you want me to say? And I said, I want you to say whatever you're feeling. When you say nothing, it makes me think one of two things. Either you could care less, or you are completely clueless and don't have a clue what I'm saying. It's right. One or the other, because there's no response. Well, then later, when everything happened, he went back to the whole intimacy thing, and that, he felt neglected, and that, that was why what happened. And I said, okay, but you never expressed that to me. You never came to me and said, hey, I'm struggling here because, and he said, well, I couldn't tell you that because I'm a man. And I was like, okay, how many times did I open up the conversation though, and give you a chance, and you would just sit there and be silent? So, I don't know if we were just dysfunctional or if it's just blame shifting or what, but that's kind of how it went down.
Well, and that is part of if it is narcissism, and in certain ways it sounds like it, that there is no responsibility on their end, for those kinds of things. And so that's kind of exhausting, because you say, tell me, and they don't want to. And true, if he doesn't have the skills to do it, but you can say words. He could say, say words. You know what I mean? So, you talked about in your bio, but I didn't tell everybody, but I want to talk about, like, that your future looks different than you thought it would, obviously, because you guys have gotten divorced. And then, but where you're living now is kind of exciting. So I don't know why it's a wannabe homesteader. Aren't you on what's a homestead anyway? Like, don't you live on a ranch now or something?
It's a little farm, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I say wannabe because I have never had a green thumb. I could kill a cactus. Yeah. And now I want to be a farmer.
That's amazing.
I tell you, I've planted a bunch of herbs, and I only have one that's thriving, and I tend to it like a baby. And I haven't even tackled the big things yet because, but that's why I say wannabe.
Yeah, it takes time. So, okay, so you think you've pivoted pretty well, but you still harbor some contradictions and in your life, and I want you to share those because I thought they were really good. If you want me to read them to you, I can.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you had said you're a contradiction of pain and joy, anxiety and peace, and faith and free will, and fulfillment and discontent. So I just love that because that's, it's true. Like, one second I'm like, yay, life is great. Other seconds I'm crying. Why am I crying over this guy? You know what I mean?
Like, my life sucks.
Yes. So talk to me about that, because I think a lot of people can relate to feeling both those things. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can do them at the same time.
Yeah, well, like you said, I just go back and forth. Like, 1 minute I think, my life is great. I have a good career now, which I never saw myself being here at this, and, making the kind of income that I make, and, having a farm, and basically being able to, I wouldn't say afford anything I want, but, these last few years, not having kids in the home, like, I've been able to indulge in things that I couldn't before. And, so, like, on that, from that vantage point, everything's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at it as, I have this great place and I have no one to share it with. I have all this, I'm able to do things now, but I'm not able to do things like I could afford to travel, but I don't want to travel alone, like things like that. And so, and just like I said, like, some days I am joyful, and then some days I don't remember what the other word was. I'm suffering. Like,
you're in pain. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And some days I feel like, I'm trying to think of what I put in there.
You had anxiety and peace.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
another thing, because sometimes I'm just like, I feel like everything's great. And then all of a sudden I'm just this ball of anxiety about
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. Then, yeah. And I just go back and forth. And I wish I want to be in a place where I just am good,
Right.
but I don't know because the one thing I said is I am still resentful. And
Yeah.
I'm 13 years out and I
Yeah.
still am resentful.
Yeah.
It
Right.
doesn't, that never, I don't think that ever goes away. I do think though that people that move on and get in another relationship, it's easier.
Okay.
I didn't do that. So so what happened, because we didn't talk about that, but
Yeah.
obviously
Well,
there
it's
was
your
an
choice.
affair, and I discovered it, and I immediately I would say I reacted without processing anything. Like I found out and I just went off the rails. And even my son had told me one time, he said, Mom, he would have never left. You put him out. And I
Okay.
don't know. I know, but I feel, I don't know, like maybe and I remember too calling his mom and telling his mom, and she said, well, just hold on,
Oh,
don't go crazy. And it was like, no, I'm going crazy.
yeah.
I told him I wanted him out of the house.
Right.
I changed the locks. I threw his stuff out the
Well,
front
I mean,
door.
I want to touch on that because I mean, some people stay, but some people don't, and that's really your choice of what you've decided after all these years of trying. If there's an affair, that felt like to you the ultimate end of the story.
Ultimate.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ultimate, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back after all these years of trying everything else. So, yeah, I mean, I understand kids want us to be like, Mom, try and work it out. Not my kids. My kids high-fived me. You know what I mean? Like, but Mom, try to work it out kind of thing. That's hard because you have to make your own decisions for what's best for you and if you feel safe enough to leave, and you did.
Well, I have to tell you though, that was my knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
Um, and I was okay with that. But then, you know, biblically,
Yeah,
I
that
got caught up in the covenant marriage and our vows, and
I
this was
understand that.
for
But
better
even
or worse, and this was
listen,
the
but
worst.
biblically, but that's listen, biblically, an affair is actually ground you're allowed to divorce for that. That
I
is
know, but
yeah.
here's the thing, and I knew that, but I also had found this website called Rejoice Ministries,
Okay.
and it was all about standing for your marriage. And this woman who her husband left their home and was with another woman, and I want to say for, I don't know, 5 years, 7 years, something, and she
Okay.
just waited for him to come home, and she just stood and prayed and stood in the gap, and he came home one day. And so I tried to ascribe to that for a while.
Right.
And I got a lot of support from that when that was my mindset that, you know what, I'm going to stand for my marriage and I'm going
Right.
to fight for my marriage. And I'm not going to just hand it over to the devil and let him destroy our family. And especially because I touched on earlier how spiritual I believed he was, and
Right.
that I felt like, the devil wants to destroy you. He wants to destroy this family. He wants to kill your testimony. He wants to kill this
Mhm.
family for God that we've created. Like I was in that mindset that I'm not gonna let the devil win. I'm
Right.
gonna pray. I'm gonna take one for the team. And
Right.
if I have to, take you back, I'll do it.
Okay.
And I was literally in that space for a couple of years. And I was, subscribing to this website and reading these emails every day, these emails of encouragement, to
Okay.
and people's testimonies of how their spouse came back and their marriage was better than ever and stuff. And I
Okay.
and I kind of wanted that for me,
Right.
but there was always this part of me that just in my heart, I think I knew that there was no going back for me. Like
Okay.
I wanted to do that because I thought it was the right thing. I
Right.
wanted to do it for my kids. I wanted to do it because of my faith. But at the end of the day, and there were, I wouldn't call them really attempts, but every now and again, there'd be an instance where maybe a conversation or something that would happen where we would talk about it. And I just felt like I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I knew that I was not going to be able to get past it or get over it.
Yeah.
And so then I got to a point, and especially too, because the longer he was out there, the more disgusted I became with his actions and with the things I was hearing about him, the things I was seeing him do,
Okay.
the behavior, and to the point that I didn't even recognize him anymore. I was like, I don't even know who this person is. Like, what happened to the man I married? Because you are not him.
I have felt
I think
that way
I said
too.
that. Like, if I met you today, I would run as far and as fast as I could. Like, there's nothing about you that, I was like, for lack of a better word, repulsed, like just complete. And I thought that too, like, how did I love this man for so long? How did I know every intimate detail about him? He knew every intimate detail about me. And now I literally am grossed out.
Right. Well, and that comes from the lots of things. You were praying, right? So I'm sure God was working on you and working on saying, because I know for me, all I wanted God to tell me was how much he loved me and who I was in him and all those things that I thought I knew for 24 years of being a Christian. But until I allowed him to really like, okay, I'm really sad right now. And then, so maybe there were things that were happening in your heart and he was opening your eyes. It's like, you got to see this guy for who he is.
Well, I have to tell you, and I know anybody that knows me, let me compose myself.
Nope.
Can attest to this, but my faith was never stronger than when I was going through this. I was never
me too
so close to God. And I don't even say close, like I pray for this now. And it's funny because I was so dependent just for every breath I took, just to be able to function, just to be able to whatever. And my longing and my desire for God in my life at that time, because otherwise I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I pray now to God, like sometimes I say, I want that with you again, but I don't want the suffering. Right. Like, can we have that kind of relationship without the suffering? Because
yes, please.
that place for me spiritually, it was the best. Like
me too. I am telling you.
Even though the pain was more than I thought I could ever bear.
Yeah, for sure.
But the way God showed up,
and that's the thing. We don't even have time for the million testimonies you have about all the little things, because you were a stay-at-home mom with no job. And okay, we're not saying no job outside the home. Okay, that's what we're going to call it.
Right.
And when he left you with, you had to
high and dry.
You had to figure it out. And I remember you figured it out, and we don't even have time. We could have a day-long show on all the things that happened for you.
All the provision, yes.
Everything. Little things that were just like miracles. I was telling somebody the other day about you going to Walmart with $80 in your wallet. And buying, I remember it. And you walked out, you bought whatever you needed. You walked out, you still had $80 in your wallet. And you were like, what is happening? It was just.
And even my pastor questioned it. He was like, are you sure? Like, listen, I know. And when you only have $80 to your name, you know how much money you have.
Right. Because I remember you would worry about not worry, but you would consider every single penny and what you were going to buy for your kids, because that's all you had.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, just my walk at that time was the best.
Yeah.
And thankfully for that, because like I said, I don't know how, and I would think that too. Like, I would look at people that had no faith, and I'm like, when you go through something so traumatic or so painful or some tremendous loss, how do people get through it? How do they do it
Well,
without?
yeah. Well, I mean, people do, I guess, in their own way, for sure. Different ways. For us, it was our faith. I relied a lot on my friends. What other things did you do? What other things did you feel like helped you? When did you decide to make the move? Was that part of your healing process? That you decided to make a big move from one state to another to buy this farm, that kind of
Well,
thing.
I actually went to Colorado first. And what happened there is, like I said, I was just so fed up. And my kids were older now. My youngest was still in junior high, but my oldest had turned 18, and, constantly threatening me that he was going to move out. I don't, like anytime I would ask for help around the house or ask him to pitch in, or, just anything. And he would be like, well, I don't have to do this. And then, and, I'll move out. And I was like, okay. So it was one of those things like, you're not going to break up with me. I'm going to break up with you.
Right.
So I just said, I'm moving and you can come with me or you can stay. And he stayed. But I just got to a point where, and we talked about this before, I just felt like I needed a clean slate.
Yeah.
I had already left my church. We talked about that I just, and I love my church dearly. And I am so grateful for all the support I had and how wonderful everyone was and how they rallied around me. But I just needed to be anonymous.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go somewhere where nobody knew me. Nobody knew my history. Nobody knew anything about
Your
me. And I
story.
could,
Anything of your story.
and I didn't have to hear about the sightings and the gossip and or even witness it, just the stuff I was dealing with all the time. I was like, I just don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was ready to be done with it, move out. So much to the point, Laura, I didn't even take like everything we had in the marriage, like the furniture, things that I had been lugging around for 20 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I cut everything loose. I didn't keep anything. I said, I don't want anything from this marriage, anything from this life. I don't want it. I'm going to get all new stuff. I kept a bed and a dresser because I needed that, and I probably acquired the dresser after. So, but I didn't keep anything. Well, that's a lie. I kept all my kitchen stuff because I love that stuff.
Of course. Right.
But literally just got rid of everything. And went to a new state and just started over. I just wanted to, and I thought that too. I was like, okay, if I have to start my life over at 40 years old, or I would think I was 42 at the time. If I'm going to start over at 42, I'm going to start all over.
Yeah.
And reinvent myself. And
right.
Here's what's funny though, Laura. I said, now I can be myself again. I can, be my true authentic self that I hid under a bushel for all these years.
Yes.
But you know what? She's never come back. She's not coming back. She's gone. I still
so
am.
But are you did you reinvent yourself? Do you feel like you are who you are now? Like, is this truly you?
Yeah, but I feel like I don't get up and sing karaoke anymore. I don't want to dance in front of people anymore.
Well, then we're gonna do that one day.
I know, but I'm just saying there's things that I thought, like I'm gonna do all the things. And it's just like, yeah, it's just not who I am anymore.
Yeah, right. Well, and also, yes, we're a different age too. So.
Well, that's true. I know, because my body doesn't allow me to dance anymore.
Right.
I danced at my dad's birthday, and my knees were like, "Okay, you're in trouble now." They made me crippled for about 2 or 3 days after that.
I dance around the house. I do that. That's always fun. So, was there anything? Well, I do want to ask, like, where you're at now. Like, how are you feeling? You talk about that you kind of are. Well, anyway, tell me where you're at now. How are you doing?
So where I am now is I have a great job. I make great money. I don't love my job, but I'm very surprised at how far I've advanced in my profession.
That's great. That's great.
And it's a good job. It's an easy job. And like I said, yeah, I wanted a homestead. I got a homestead.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like, I'm doing the things that I want to do, but the downside is, well, like one, because I relocated, I'm by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm far away from my kids. They would, they don't want to come travel. Even when I was in Colorado, which is only half the distance of Texas. Now I'm in Texas, so I'm twice as far. So they're probably really never going to come. And that's okay, because even when I was in Vegas, they were living their lives and doing their things. Even when I lived 5 miles away, they didn't have time for me.
Right.
So, and I, what, like, it's like that thing too, I told my dad, to my credit, I raised good kids. They're all financially good. They're all good.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like living at home with their babies and strung out on drugs. So I'm grateful for that.
Right.
But I wish they needed their mama a little bit.
I know, right?
So
Me too.
they're just living their lives. And, and that's another thing. Like, I honestly have to say, when I was raising my kids and when I was married and when I was in the, that season of my life, it never occurred to me that that was going to end.
Yeah.
I just thought it was always going to be like that. Or, at least like, yeah, the kids will get married and then they'll come home every holiday and all the grandkids will be here and it'll be like a big family thing. No, they have other families they have to go visit. They have, significant others that have families also. And it's not like that. But at that time, I never thought that was going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just felt like that was, and that would have happened regardless. But I just feel like it stings a little more because, the way things happen.
Yeah, for sure. I know. I think about that sometimes because I'm like, oh, it's like they have people they need to see, and it's harder with not being, they go see some of them see their dad. Some of them don't, so we kind of do that kind of thing. So yeah, it's different. Our lives are different for sure. I mean, there is a freedom in being able to reinvent yourself or figure out who really was I, especially with you, if you were a single mom at first in college and then meeting him and all that. It's like trying to figure out who am I? Who, you know what I mean? I don't know. I didn't know who I was. I'm figuring that out. I don't know who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I think that too, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm 50 something years old.
Right.
Still trying to,
and that's the nice thing is we can, yes, if we're not dead, we're not done. That's what I always say. So it's all good. Is there anything we didn't talk about today that you'd like to talk about?
No, I don't know. This conversation was so different from the first one, but
no, it was good
though.
though.
I would just say, like this, and I know some people say, I hate when people say that, but this is my like thing that I said all along, and I still say to this day. I may even get it as a tattoo.
Okay.
Is it is what it is, and we always want what it could be, what it was, what it should have been, but it's not. It is what it is.
Okay.
And so right now my life is what it is.
Right.
And
you're the one who's able to have that control over it and make the choices that you want. So I think that's a positive part of that.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
But I'm happy. So here I go contradicting myself. I'm happy where I am.
Right.
But I wish my people were with me. I guess that's, I miss my tribe.
Right.
But I'm very happy where I am. Now, if I could have my tribe and be where I am, that would be
right. Did you feel like you had your tribe around you when you were going through the hard times? Did you feel like you could share with people and tell them what was happening?
So interestingly enough, within my family, like I would say with my kids, one of my kids like literally just abandoned the whole thing and wasn't there. And that was a little hurtful.
Yeah.
And then my mom, like I said, she had just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Mm-hmm. So the last thing I wanted to do was dump on her, so I really kept my distance from her, which I'm resentful of that, and I really didn't tell her a lot of what was going on because she was dealing with her own stuff.
Right.
But I remember her brother, my uncle, one time telling me, like, your mom's really worried about you. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't burden her with that.
Right. So you regret not talking to her.
And then what's interesting is the people that I thought were my friends, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people did abandon me. And especially, and you probably know this too, married people. Like
Oh,
once you're not a couple anymore, they just don't hang out with you anymore. And
yeah.
or they take sides. There were people that I couldn't believe were
Yeah.
still fraternizing with him and the new one. And
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, really? Like, and then a lot of people, like one of our friends, and you know them, but he literally told her he didn't want her hanging out with me anymore because I was single. And he didn't want like us going out together because now I'm trying to pick up men or something, which I totally wasn't. But um
Yeah,
and
and
then
that's too bad because you're not able to really tell the truth. It's like I just need a friend. I'm not going out to and I'm not going to make your wife pick up men.
right, that's what I'm saying. Like, why would I? But I'm just saying, so people that I thought were my friends, I I guess really weren't. And then and then some people I alienated for whatever reason. Same with my church. Like I said, they were wonderful. But at some point I just was like, I need to disassociate from you guys because I was tired of living in that. And
Yeah.
I wanted to something different then.
Right.
And then I had people that were unexpected, like you, like Monica, people that I never expected to be so supportive. Debbie, um, that just showed up.
Well, we
And
love
I was like,
you.
wow. Well, I mean, and you guys were my friends, but I was like, my own friends aren't
Yeah.
checking on me the way you guys are.
Yeah.
Um, so that was an eye opener. And I recognized it then. I recognize it now. Um,
That was the hardest part for me was really seeing loyalties and who reaches out and stuff like that.
yeah.
I've had a lot of people that I didn't expect to reach out to me. And so I feel very taken care of in a lot of ways. And then other days I feel like I feel pretty alone. So yeah, it's nice to recognize the good ones. That's for sure.
Well, and it's just funny because the people that you thought were on your team really weren't. And then
Right.
people that you didn't even expect show up,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's like, wow. And I remember one time I came to your house and we had gone, I think we went to Women of Faith. I don't remember. We went to some kind of conference
That's probably what we did. Yeah.
and you had your then spouse take
Uh-huh.
my car and go gas it up. Do you remember that?
I don't.
And I came back and I had a full tank of gas and you
Oh,
were like, and I was just
oh,
like,
right.
oh gosh,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
That sounds like
uh,
something we would have done. Yeah.
I know. And I was just like, really? That's so nice.
I'm surprised that he did that. So that was probably that's been a while.
Well, I'm sure you probably told him to do it. I thought.
Oh yeah. Oh no, that wasn't something he thought of. I could say I was going to run out of gas that minute and he wouldn't have gotten me gas.
Oh,
I was always so jealous of people who were like, "Oh, my husband took my car to go get gas." And I'm like, "God, I would love that."
yeah, but just little things like that. Like, and I remember with I know we're not supposed to say names, but
If you're
they
talking
came,
nicely.
yeah, okay. So Debbie and Kevin.
Uh-huh.
Um, Kevin came over and like did all this yard work at my house, and
See, that's really nice, and they will be happy to hear that.
I don't know
Well,
why it makes me cry 13
because,
years later.
because that's really sweet. Because
Yeah,
it's really sweet. Well, we love you.
yeah. And then I
Well,
have great friends like Barbara that
yeah.
she was there for me through thick
Oh,
and thin
oh yeah, for sure. Right. And that's the thing is that that's important. I've talked about that almost every episode is to find that good group of friends, and the way you do that is by being vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, and you don't isolate, because look, I can isolate, I totally get that, but when you're vulnerable, the right people will come around you. Like some vampires is what I call them. Some life suckers, right? Some
Yeah.
vampires will come around you, but for the most part, you're going to see who those real people are who can handle you being vulnerable or crying or listening to your story for the 100th time. Because even my kids, I'm like, I'm so sorry I'm like talking about this again. They're like, Mom, you were together 33 years. Of course you're going to talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the true friends that have come out of this. So,
Well, the thing for me that I would say is it was so humbling because I was always the person that would say, "Oh, look at that poor girl, her husband cheat. Let's buy her some groceries, or
right, right.
let's take her kids." Or, I was always the one doing that for other people. And then I was that person,
Yeah.
you know, and that was very humbling, to
Yes.
be the one that needed that.
Right.
And especially because initially I wouldn't ask for help. I wouldn't
Right.
ask anybody
No,
for help
no.
because and then I got to the point where I had to, like you said,
Right.
I had to be vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
and it was okay.
Yeah. It was good.
Yeah.
Look, from my perspective, no one thought less of you. Okay. We thought he left and she has nothing. You know what I mean? So that was the thing. So,
I know, but I didn't want to be like a pity case either. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I was the person that would always look at someone else like that and be like, "Oh, poor thing. What
right.
can we do to help her?" And then I was that poor thing. And I was like, "This isn't, how did I get here? How
Gosh,
did
that
I end up
that
on
would
this
be the
side of
great
the?"
title of something. How did I get here?
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be my book.
I know. Well, and I thought that I was like, man, I'm not, it's like when my parents got divorced. I remember, and I was only like 8 years old, maybe,
Yeah.
when they said they were getting divorced. I thought, oh, well, other people's parents get divorced, but not my parents.
Right. Yes.
And then
Oh,
when I
for
got
sure.
divorced, and the same thing too, that was another big thing about like the whole standing and stuff, because there's just such a stigma to being divorced.
Right.
And even for me myself, like a sense of failure that
Right.
my marriage failed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I went through that too. That definitely was one of my mindsets was I failed at this.
Yeah.
I should have tried harder, but that's not even I've learned now that trying harder isn't it's not biblical. It's not what you have to do. There's certain
Well,
things. There's a lot. There's so many layers. We can't cover it all
well,
today.
some days I feel that way. Like, what did I do? Like, what could I have done better
Right?
that may have produced a different outcome? But then there's some days when I'm like, you know what? I I couldn't have. It just, it is what it is.
It is what it
Yeah.
is.
And it
My
doesn't
son says
matter
it.
what I did, it happened. And but one thing I never wanted in my entire life was to be divorced,
Yeah,
ever.
me too.
And yeah, I don't think anybody says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get divorced." No, nobody wants that. But I don't know. But I'm over it now.
Good.
Well, yeah, I guess for the most part.
Yeah, right. You're moving forward from it. Well, and the thing is that I feel like I mean being together so long, it's going to be something that we miss because we had dreams of retiring together and all
Right.
those things, right? You plan for the future. So, yeah, it's of course it's going to feel odd even 13 years later. 9 months later for me,
And you
it's
want to know
odd.
something, and this might sound superficial, but I'm just going to throw this out there.
Okay. You
One
can.
thing that really makes me mad, I swear I think about this, is if he knew he was going to do this, or if this was going to happen, I wish it would have happened when I was still youthful, because
Oh,
I feel like he stole my youth. You know what I mean? And now I think, like, even trying to find somebody now, because I obviously don't feel as cute and attractive as I did,
okay.
when we met. Um, but I feel like, like, you look at a couple that's been together for, 50
Right.
years, and when he looks at her, he sees the bride of his youth.
Yes.
He sees that young, beautiful girl that he fell in love with.
Right.
No man will ever look at me and say that now. Even no matter if I met somebody and got married and was married for 25 years from now,
Yeah.
he will not see the bride of his youth. And
Hmm.
that just, I don't know why that bothers me so much.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, because, like, there's people, and because we went to school together, but there's people that they find themselves divorced and they start cooking up with people from high school,
Okay.
like going back.
Okay.
And I told my friend, I said, you know why? Because they remember
Right.
them in their
Exactly.
youth. They can look at her now or look at him now and remember when they were what
Yes.
they, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That
And I
cute
think,
teenager. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's why people revisit,
High
you know,
schools, high school
and
or
we were
college
really
reference. Yeah.
talking about kind of something scandalous about, but I was like, I think that's why so many people go back
Yeah.
to like people they knew in high school after they
Right.
get divorced
Yeah.
because,
It is a comfort, right?
well, because we certainly don't look like we did
No.
40 years ago.
No. Oh my gosh, I thought I was so fat. And I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
me
I
too.
would
I know.
pay to be I would pay to be that fat again.
I wish I could be that fat. Yeah.
Oh
But
my
that's,
goodness, yeah. Well,
yeah.
I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of you and the way you're moving forward and everything you've done because, it's just amazing what you've done and how and thank you for um, being real and encouraging us and really telling us, you still cry. Well, obviously yeah, I still cry too. We cry and we're resentful and things like that, but also there's happiness, so and joy and all
Yeah.
that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on here today. And if any of this resonated with you today, will you please go onto social media and let us know if Chris's story resonated with you? And I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you for being here, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me stop.